Let me hurry up, it's cold out here. Let me get some of this so-called snow. We think it's snow. Okay, earlier today, I saw a video where someone went outside and took some snow and took a lighter and tried to melt the snow like I used to when I was a kid. So I have a lighter, and to prove that the lighter is real, I'm going to light this piece of paper. As you see, it's real. And so let me take some snow. It's supposed to be snow. Put it here. Let's try to melt snow. Well, ice rather, it's supposed to be ice. And that's what ice usually does, it should be water underneath right now. But as you see, it's not melting. It's going to actually start deteriorating. Look at this. I've never seen anything like this. No water, no condensation, anything. This is not snow. This is crazy. Anyway, so I went and grabbed my map gas, which is like a blowtorch. Literally like a blowtorch. Let's see what happens now. Where is the water? This is not snow. This is crazy. What are they spraying in our air? Okay, now I just wanted to try an ice cube. You know, just a regular ice cube, to see what happens when I light an ice cube with a lighter. If you look closely, you can see water. It's a drop about to hit the ground there. It's melting. You can see the water. Now let me try my blowtorch. As you can see, the water's look at that. Water.
To the quote, because it's an important one, and it comes from the Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, and it was at a DoD news briefing, April 27th, 1997. It was on a conference of on international terrorism, terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is 4 years before 9/11, and this was in the DoD news briefing that followed. And what he said, and I quote, "Others are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter climates, set off earthquakes and volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves," unquote. Now, that's a powerful statement for a seated Secretary of Defense to make and attribute to terrorist organizations. When you think about it, you know, the idea of stimulating these kinds of events, there's actually a treaty that forbids this. It was signed by the United States in 1977. The treaty was initiated by the former Soviet Union, and by the end, over 60 countries signed this, saying they wouldn't use environmental manipulation as a weapon of war. And yet, Donald Rumsfeld, when he was in the Bush administration, wanted to abandon that treaty. And his rationale was, we've got these great technologies now. We can launch covert wars. Nobody will even know we were there, and they'll invite us in for the cleanup.
In terms of weather manipulation, Dr. Richard Day, the 1969 man, he actually worked on weapon manipulation in the US military during World War II. And the BBC recently did a radio documentary in which they exposed that the Great Flood at Lynmouth in 1952, when they had 250 times the rainfall, and it created this massive wave of water that came through the village, killing 35 people, was actually done by the RAF. They called it Operation Cumulus, also Operation Witch Doctor, and it was manipulated on purpose as an experiment on weather manipulation. It's been going on that long, and earlier Here is a US Air Force document, 1996. It describes the artificial creation of floods, hurricanes, droughts, and earthquakes, and continues. Weather modification will become a part of domestic and international security and could be done unilaterally. It could have offensive and defensive applications and even be used for deterrence purposes. The ability to generate precipitation, fog, storms on Earth, to modify space weather, and the production of artificial weather all are part of an integrated set of military technologies. Now, of course, most people will now be bloody aware, my God, were we bombarded this year or what? With chemtrails, not contrails, which disappear, condensation trails, chemtrails that don't disappear if they come out the back of these bloody aircraft. They stay around and they come out and eventually drop to the earth, and they have strontium, they have aluminium, they have barium. It's acidifying water, it's acidifying the land. In the HARP patents and specifications, etc., it said this: dispersed metallic particles such as aluminium, barium, and strontium, the main chemical ingredients of chemtrails, may increase the atmosphere's conductivity and therefore enhance HARP's weather modification performance. Anyway, this is the wish list in documents for Agenda 21 operating through the United Nations. An end to national sovereignty, all justified by saving the world, by the way. An end to national sovereignty. State planning and management of all land resources, ecosystems, deserts, forests, mountains, oceans, and fresh water. Agriculture, rural development, biotechnology, and ensuring equity equals slavery. The state is to define the role of business and financial resources. Abolition of private property is not sustainable, they say. Here we go again. How many times has this come up? Restructuring the family unit. Children to be raised by the state. People told, this is what Aldous Huxley said in Brave New World, people told what their job will be, major restrictions on movement, creation of human settlement zones, I'll get to them in a minute, mass resettlement as people are forced to vacate land where they live for reasons I'm coming to, dumbing down education, achieved a long time ago, mass global depopulation in pursuit of all of the above. And what they're doing to hide it is they're setting Agenda 21 organizations up in all local communities, all over the world, America, Britain, all over the place, and they're giving the impression that each of these is basically an independent local community initiative, when it's all being orchestrated through this organization, through the United Nations, called Local Governments for Sustainability. So when I came across all this stuff, I thought I'll have a look at the Isle of Wight, a few miles by a few miles, and I found that the Isle of Wight had joined Agenda 21 in November 2000. And it says on the Agenda 21 Isle of Wight website that it was developed and written in partnership with the people of the Isle of Wight and reflects their vision for the future of the island. Ever since I saw that, I have been asking everyone I meet on the Isle of Wight, have you ever heard of Agenda 21? No, mate, no, mate, no, mate. Nobody's heard of it. And yet, it was the people. This is going on all over the world. And they openly talk in some of these organizations connected to it about the post-democratic, post-industrial world, which is basically symbolized in so many movies recently that are putting this stuff in. Now, Zbigniew Brzezinski, big mentor of Barack Obama, one of the demo cons, he was the national security advisor to Jimmy Carter. And he wrote in another of his prophetic books, because he knows what's coming, called America's Role in the Technotronic Era, 1970. The Technotronic Era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. 1970 he wrote that. Now, we've had a technocracy which is defined as government by technicians, specifically management of society by technical experts, including bankers, by the way, that includes. And look at what we've now got in Italy. One of the biggest economies, we have a government with not one elected official in it, headed by this guy, Mario Monti.
Essentially, we were following up what we understood to be the Congress's agreement to allow the Department of Defense to use chemicals and biologicals on the American citizens without our knowledge or consent. So when we found this document, indeed vetted it for ourselves in Washington, D.C., we realized that much of the spraying that people had endured in Southern California with malathion was all part of the extermination plan. So they go on to talk about unethical human experimentation in the United States. And you can look at all of this for yourselves. I am going to curtail this broadcast now. I will be talking about this on further radio shows.
The quickest way to reduce populations through famine like in Africa or through diseases. U.S. Department Office of Population Affairs. Did you know there was a Department of Population Affairs? And this is from David Rockefeller, chairman of the Council of Foreign Relations, who recently passed Bilderberg Group, Bohemian Club, all the rest of it. The United Nations goal is to reduce the population selectively by encouraging abortion, forced sterilization, and control of the human reproduction, and regards 2/3 of our human populations as excess baggage, with 350,000 people eliminated every day. It's a horrible thing to say, but it's just as bad not to say it. Now that was Jacques Cousteau, aquatic explorer in UNESCO. Now he said this back in 1991, okay? That's when we'll get into the Georgia Guidestones got put up. The extinction of the human species may not only be inevitable, but a good thing. Earth first. A total population of 250 to 300 million, a 95% reduction would be ideal. That's the same numbers used on the Georgia Guidestones. Whatever the price of the Chinese Revolution, this is Rockefeller here, I'm sorry. Whatever the price of the Chinese Revolution has obviously succeeded in producing a more efficient and dedicated administration, but also fostering high morale and community of purpose. Communitarianism. The social experiment under Chairman Mao's leadership is one of the most important and successful in human history.
In some of China's largest cities, a high-tech effort is underway to bust low-level offenders, jaywalkers. Cameras record them going through intersections, zero in on their face, and then publicly shame them on nearby video screens. It's all part of the Chinese government's new social credit system, where people's daily behavior is monitored and rated. I think it's a good thing, this woman said. It makes people more honest. But this social credit rating goes far beyond a traditional credit score, which is based on your finances. China's version factors in everything from jaywalking to smoking on trains to buying too many video games. If your score gets too low, you can be banned from buying plane tickets, renting a house, or getting a loan. Police in Beijing have been wearing these glasses that can recognize faces linked to the government's national database to help boost arrests. How advanced is this technology?
This is cutting edge.
Wu Fei is CEO of a company that makes the glasses. He claims he doesn't know how the government intends to use his technology.
I have no idea.
Really?
Yes.
Do you trust the government the way they're using your technology?
Sorry, I can't answer this.
You can't answer that.
This is outside our scope of questions.
The Daily Mail reports Microsoft's Bill Gates is backing a startup that will provide live and unfiltered high-definition footage of every inch of Earth. The startup, Earth Now, plans to launch 500 satellites to cover Earth's atmosphere in Big Brother real-time video surveillance. Sounds reasonable, right? Humanity wasn't using its privacy anyway. As Gizmodo reports, the company's goal is to make money selling its service to government and enterprise clients, and that's kind of terrifying. Sure, governments have their own individual satellite operations, but the scale of what Earth Now is promising is jaw-dropping. Who better to calm worries and work through regulatory hurdles than the world's most prolific philanthropist? He wouldn't do anything immoral with that tech.
So what you're talking about here is that there's in this vision, this dream he had, there's a reset and the New World Order starts, this man comes onto the scene claiming that he's going to erase all borders and unite the world. And this is when the internet, when it reboots, it's completely different. The internet is completely changed. So it's blacked out for 2 weeks, and there's a complete and utter change to the internet. Nothing's the same. I mean, news networks are completely different. The media has changed. Everything is completely changed. And it's sort of like it was a potentially designed event. And that's kind of what this predictive programming in this commercial is saying, is that there will be a reset. Everything will go down. And then when it comes back up, everything will be different again. So I find this very interesting. Perhaps this is predictive programming of what they're planning, and it correlates to this man's vision. This man's vision, several things in his vision have already come to pass. For example, he talked about seeing soldiers with blue helmets driving Hummers. Now see, the thing is, Hummers didn't exist in the 1980s, okay? That's one. Two, no army, the UN army did not have blue helmets or hats until I think around 2001, 2 or 3, around in that range. So he had seen all these things. He's seen Hummers, he saw modern computers, and he had saw these blue helmeted soldiers back in 1980 in his dream, and all these things have already come to pass. In his dream, I'll leave a link in the description here of the video where he explains these final days of this dream and what happens, and it's pretty disturbing.
Now in Season 1, Episode 6 of Jericho, we actually see preparations of an EMP, and I'll show the clip in a moment to come, but we've also been seeing all the preparations when it comes to power outage drills going on around the exact same time as Operation Gotham Shield. And it's also important to note that there just so happens to be a city in New York called Jericho, New York, that's not even 30 miles outside of New York City, with Operation Gotham Shield taking place around there. Oh my goodness, no surprise or coincidence whatsoever.
Over 8 years ago, we had a huge recession. However, the numbers are looking as if we're going to have something far, far worse this time around. Perhaps something like we saw in the Great Depression. So if you could imagine widespread unemployment, panic, people losing all their life savings, and then on top of that having a culture that is greatly divided, such a nation is going to have huge amount of turmoil and corruption and even anarchy. How will you survive in such a situation? Will you be able to live through such an event? Could even something like this start World War III? Could it even lead to resetting our entire country? Could we even get to a point where we don't even have electricity and you have to fend for yourself with people dying all around you? What are some of the top items that you should have if we just happen to fall into anarchy and pretty much there's nothing left of the economy? Should be obvious to you at this point that fiat currencies such as US dollar are going to be pretty much worthless. You're going to need a wheelbarrow full of it to buy a sandwich. So we're going to obviously say that that's definitely something you don't need. Probably be better for heating your house, if anything, at that point. But of course there are some stuff that you should have on hand. Gold in certain forms. There are actually ways you can buy it to where it can work well for you.
I mean, a lot of people are concerned about what's going to happen with the world. I mean, you've read all those stories about, you know, billionaires, tech billionaires buying these bunkers, trying to put, they're buying places in Australia, New Zealand.
I've done
I mean, they're ready to get out of here. They're ready to run off because
they know something's happening. They know that.
Absolutely. So, you know, if these people that have all the means in the world are concerned, then you and I, everyday people, I mean, I think we also have to be protected with our finances.
So can the small guy get in on this? I mean, because obviously not everybody's got a lot of money.
Absolutely. We're set up for the household investor. So, you know, we're really, you know, it's for someone that either getting in first time or, you know, a lot of people have the like old 401ks, like you left a job and you forgot about it. Do you want to keep that in the stock market when it collapses, or do you want to move it into something tangible? And that's what we offer. And, you know, we give them an option. We help them call the employer. We help them do the paperwork. We do it over the phone. We have a staff. We make it easy so that if they decide they want to move it into something with us, we give them the way to do that and the means to do it.
What about the person that doesn't have a lot of money in their account and they just want to be able to be in a situation to where if something really bad happened, like there was a massive economic crash, they would be at least protected somewhat, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think picking up some silver in that situation makes the most sense. That's a really good bartering tool.
I mean, what low, I mean, because I know that you sell smaller amounts. What's like the smallest amount you can sell, and what's the high? I mean, obviously you can sell a lot, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have a maximum. You know, we've had a lot of people that have, you know, came to us and, you know, have a lot of money, either inherited money and they want to put money away. But we're really set up for the household investor. Typically, our typical investor is someone that has an IRA or a 401k and they're fed up with the stock market and they want to get into something different. That's a majority, but we do also offer, if someone wants to get some gold delivered to their home or some silver, you know, we have that option also. So we have, you know, this is a 1964. They call it junk silver. It's a silver quarter. It's 90% silver. And talk about inflation. So this is 90% silver. It's a quarter. This is worth about $4 today. So,
really?
You know,
wow.
The value of the face value is 25 cents, but the actual value of the silver in it is about $4. So, you know, silver's really kept up with inflation if you really do the numbers and crunch it. And that's why, you know, smart investors always take a portion and they put a little bit into metals.
So anybody can actually get in on this, it sounds like, pretty much. I mean, that's what I wanted to get at, because I kind of got this impression, you know, a lot of people, they get kind of turned off by this because they think, oh, you got to have a bunch of money to buy just a little bit of gold or silver. But you just showed a little quarter there that cost $4, right? It's a $4 value. So, I mean, that's like a combo at a restaurant or a cheap restaurant.
Yeah, right? Yeah, no, I mean, we do have some minimums in place because the way that, you know, the state of California is set up, but yeah, we're set up for everybody, and we're set up for education. The thing that people like about our company is that we have so much information and our brokers are so educated. You know, our typical broker's been doing this for almost 10 years. They can answer any question. They understand gold and silver. They understand the market. So that's really where we thrive. If people are looking to understand the market in this arena, we can offer them a lot of education and a lot of learning tools and a lot of guides. We have a lot of guides. If someone wants to spend time and read, we have tons of free information we can send out to them.
Oh, that's cool. So you're not like, you're just trying to help them out and educate them and get them to where they want to be.
And a lot of people just call us, they just have questions. You know, they just want to learn about metals, they want to learn about the markets, and we send them out a free guide, we answer questions, and, you know, it's a family business. You know, Charles and I, we own the business, we have a lot of family members working here, so, and we're involved in everything. I'm involved with the shipping, you know, I make sure all the shipments go out, I'm involved in everything on the day-to-day basis, and, you know, it feels good when someone gets that metal in their hands. I had a client call me yesterday, so excited. They got their gold and silver. They've wanted it. The metal looked perfect, and they, you know, socked it away somewhere safe, and they were happy that they finally were able to get it in their hands.
Now, this is kind of maybe a question you don't get very often. These are just ones coming into my head. But
sure.
What about the situation? Let's just say there was some sort of economic crash of some sort, and you have some of this gold or silver. I mean, what would you do to somehow get your value out of that gold and silver.
Well, that's the benefit of precious metals. That's the benefit of being in bullion coins. In my opinion, is that it's easy to identify a coin. So the weight, the authenticity, when it has a mint mark on it and you can see it, basically you can trade and barter with anything. So because the value is so easy to understand, you can put it on a scale, you test the authenticity, and then you're trading and bartering. So I think a lot of people, when they realize that inflation in this country, and in our ebook, The Government Lies Exposed, it talks about inflation. Inflation last year was above 9% every month. It's not the 2% the government reports. This is math. Yeah, it's actually 9% per month last year. Yeah, that's true inflation.
Compounded.
Yeah, that's the real number.
What is that a year? What is that a year?
Well, it is month to month. Every month was 9%, a little over 9% per year. So the total annual inflation for last year is over 9% for the whole year.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying, but that's
still
really high. I mean, that's like insanely high, because if it's compounded, like the next year, it would be more than 18%. When you add it up, it would be like 20 something, and then it would just keep going up. It'd probably only take like 5 years or something, or 10
to lose almost all its value.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing. There was a bill passed 3 weeks ago it was HR 504. It wasn't passed, excuse me. This congressman put this bill that he wants to go back to the gold standard. It's called HR 504. He put it out in Congress. He says just using the government statistics of 2% inflation per year, that the dollar every 35 years will lose half of its value.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's based on their numbers. The real numbers, it's inflation much higher, and that means people, when they're leaving
like
money,
5 years, wouldn't it?
It would be like almost 5 years. Yeah, I mean,
9% is a lot higher than 2%.
And if you really think, if you go back just 10 years, and you think
10 years,
going to the supermarket, buying milk and orange juice, buying buying meat, buying all the things.
Half the price, I think.
Absolutely, it was half the price. So the numbers are there. It's just because it happens every day. Inflation is like a silent killer. It just happens.
Have you heard about this thing in California about all these people, mass exodus from California? You have this massive change between the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
And there's like people, they got like trailer homes everywhere and stuff, and just people living it. It's insane, and maybe a little bit has to do with this inflation and just.
It's the divide between the rich and the poor, especially in California, is astronomical, and it's scary. And I think that part of the reason that we're seeing that is because when you have this debt bubble that we're in, we're constantly in, and the government just continues to print and print. People forget. It's easier for a politician to say, "We'll just print more money. We're not going to cut Medicare and Medicaid," but really, if they're printing money, the amount of money that you're making is dwindling. So either way, the average person is losing out because we never get our debt in line.
How can someone get some of this gold and silver?
Yeah, so if someone has interest to learn about precious metals, we have a gold and silver guy that's really set up for someone new, first-time gold buyer. Talks about a few easy steps to get in with us. So they can call us. Phone number is 877-646-5347. They can call anytime. Phone lines are open 24 hours. If we're not available, someone will call them back and send them the free information. But yeah, in terms of if they wanted to get started either doing a direct investment or they want to learn about setting up an IRA, we have a full staff here that we've streamlined everything to make it easy and smooth, and any questions they have, they can always contact us.
So also I have a link in this video, below the video in the description, where you can click and enter your information so you can learn more about it and get in contact with someone at Noble Gold.
Yeah, they just put their name, their email. If they put their phone number in, we'll call them back just to confirm that they got it. They'll get the free guide immediately.
Ebook was called, I got it right here, The Government Lies Exposed.
Next time you see this plant in your backyard, don't cut it down, because this is the best natural painkiller you'll ever find. Some people even compare it to morphine. This common plant is called wild lettuce and was commonly used by Native Americans 2 centuries ago for both food and medicine. So today I'm going to show you how to make a simple wild lettuce extract to keep in your medicine cabinet and use whenever you need it. Now if you take a leaf or stem and squeeze it, you'll see a white substance coming out. This is where the potency of the plant lies. Because of this white juice, the early European settlers also called it opium lettuce. This milky substance doesn't contain any opiates, but it's working on the central nervous system directly to lessen the feeling of pain. Nowadays, many people are turning their attention back to this lost knowledge and use it as a replacement for addictive prescription pain medicines. So let's avert our gaze from our modern survival thinking for just a bit and look at how our great-grandparents did it 150 years ago. This is exactly the kind of information I found in this 350-page book called The Lost Ways. This is probably the only survival book I've actually enjoyed reading. You won't believe how many survival things we've lost to history. I found the wild lettuce on page 113 and decided to make my own painkiller. I collected about 50 leaves today and washed them thoroughly. So the first thing you should do is grind them up in a blender, not very thinly and only just for a few seconds. Place the ground leaves into a wide pot and add just enough water to cover them. Now place the pot on the stove on low heat for 30 minutes. Do not let it boil because you'll destroy all the good stuff in it. Stir every 15 minutes until the water reaches a dark brown color, just like this. Now pour the substance while still hot into another pot through a strainer. Almost none or very little plant material should get through it. Try to squeeze as much water as you can while the plant is in the strainer. This solution contains all the core elements of wild lettuce, especially the pain-killing essence. But it's not concentrated enough yet. So in order to obtain this essence, you should warm it over low heat again until the water is vaporized, basically dehydrating the solution until it becomes a paste like this. Be careful at the end when there is little water left. You should not burn the extract at the bottom of the pot. What you should have now here is pure wild lettuce extract. You can pour it in a small glass container like this and put it in your medicine cabinet for later use when you'll need it. Wild lettuce is unscheduled by the FDA, meaning it's legal to grow, own, and forage without prescription or license, just like how the Native Americans used to heal their pain. In The Lost Ways, you'll find lots of these common and valuable weeds with pictures, how to identify them, how to prepare them, and how to use them, all with different medical effects. Because when the medical system collapses, this will be the only option you have to heal yourself. I personally happen to know the man behind this book. Claude is an old-fashioned guy by any standard. He lives with his wife and 2 children in a log cabin he personally built. Cooks outside on an open flame in a cauldron most of the time, and all of his clothes are handmade. He has a 150-square-foot root cellar stuffed with all sorts of homemade canned foods and goods, and he raises cows, sheep, and chickens. I thought several times to myself that this guy will never be troubled by any crisis, because the coming crisis we all prep for is what folks 150 years ago called daily life. No electrical power, no refrigerators, no internet, no computers, no TV, no hyperactive law enforcement, and no Safeway or Walmart. They got things done or else we wouldn't be here. In the next 7 minutes, Claude will unearth a long-forgotten secret that helped our ancestors survive famines, wars, economic crisis, disease, droughts, and anything else life threw at them. A secret that will help you do the same for your loved ones when America crumbles into the ground. He's also going to share with you 3 pioneer lessons that will ensure your kids are well fed even when others are rummaging through garbage bins. In fact, these 3 old teachings will improve your life just as they did for me, immediately once you hear them.
My name is Claude Davis. You may know me from my website, askaprepper.com, or you may have seen my warnings in the media, but few of you know me personally. My story is emotionally heavy, with struggles and disappointments, but also with a faith in God and a strong will to survive that finally led me being here. So pay close attention, because this video will change your life for the good. Lesson number 1, don't take anything for granted. My grandparents from my father's side came to America from Ukraine just before the Second World War and started a small farm in Texas where I grew up without missing a thing. But my grandfather wasn't so lucky. When he was only 12 and still in Ukraine, he survived one of the most horrific famines. Of the 100 families that lived on his street, only 20 survived. So what you're about to hear is a real recollection, as it was written in a personal journal just after the crisis by one of his neighbors. Where did all the bread disappear? I do not really know. Maybe they've taken it all abroad. The authorities have confiscated it, removed it from the villages, loaded grain into the railway coaches, and took it away someplace. They've searched the houses and taken away everything, to the smallest thing. All the vegetable gardens, all the cellars were raked out, and everything was taken away. It was so dreadful that every day became engraved in my memory. People were lying everywhere as dead flies. The stench was awful. Many of our neighbors and acquaintances from our street died. We tried to survive the best we could. We collected grass, goosefoot, burdocks, rotten potatoes, and made pancakes, soups from putrid beans or nettles, collected clay from the trees and ate it, ate sparrows, pigeons, cats, and dogs. When there were still cattle, it was eaten first, then the domestic animals. Some were eating their own children. I would never be able to eat my child. One of our neighbors came home when her husband, suffering from severe starvation, ate their own baby daughter. This woman went crazy. Another neighbor wrote a petition to the authorities, and here's just a paragraph from that. It said, "Please return the grain that you've confiscated from me. If you don't return it, I'll die. I'm 78 years old and I'm incapable of searching for food for myself." And of course, nobody cared. In a crisis, it's everyone for himself. Although in many cases, families did still remain families. But just after the winter, when there's absolutely nothing to eat, my grandfather, together with his mother, went to the nearest town where the government had established a soup kitchen. Unfortunately, the 25-mile journey was too much for his mother. After just 5 miles, she couldn't walk anymore. My grandfather noted in his journal, "Mother said, save yourself, run to town." I turned back twice. I could not bear to leave my mother, but she begged and cried, and I finally went for good. Now, I don't know about you guys. I'm a father myself, and when I read these things, I burst into tears. Now, please allow me to take a wild guess here, without getting mad at me. Your life's not perfect, but at least you have a computer or a mobile device to watch this video on. Your fridge is probably half full, and while you have your problems, starvation is not one of them. And even though your job or retirement could be more enjoyable, you probably have enough money to at least get by. And that's great. But make no mistake taking this for granted. History has shown us many times that it can all fly away in a split second. The biggest misstep that you can take now is to think that this can never happen in America or to you. All that my grandfather and our ancestors who came here and formed America lived through would be in vain without lesson number 2. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Now, call me old-fashioned, I don't care, but I completely believe in America and what our ancestors stood for. They all had a part in turning this land into one of the most powerful countries in the world. Many died and suffered before a creative mind found an ingenious solution to, maybe, a century-long problem. Now, believe it or not, our ancestors' skills are all covered in American blood. And this is why these must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same for our children and our children's children. But now, my friends, we're sitting on the edge of oblivion. Our fathers and grandfathers were probably the last generation to practice basic things like building a root cellar or making pemmican. Our ancestors laid the bricks and built the world's strongest foundation that we're about to irreversibly forget. And we're going to pay the ultimate price for this, because if you have a big, strong house with a weak foundation, it doesn't matter if it looks nice on the outside. The next flood will sweep it away. And that is exactly what will happen to most Americans in the coming crisis. So here we are, human beings in the 21st century, several lifetimes and a world away from our grandparents and their ways. Have we become better at living? I think not. I watch as we have become ever more expectant that the world owes us a living. Consumerism has reached epic proportions, and people feel aggrieved if they don't own the latest gadget. The truth is, we never have been more disconnected from life, from the world, from the soil, from the trees, and from our own souls. We're straying away from our roots on a dangerous road from which there will be no turning back. And the good and the bad news is that we're the last generation that can truly do something about it. We no longer know how to live without refrigerators, without cars, without phones, without supermarkets. What will you do tomorrow if you simply are unable to buy things. I sometimes think that we're kidding ourselves with our bug-out bags and with our 3-day food rations. Wouldn't we be better off looking at what the pioneers took with them when they traveled from Independence, Missouri all the way to Oregon City? Game meat was unreliable even then, so don't think that they made this 5-month journey counting only on that. If your life depended on this, what bug-out bag would you take with you? I know I'd stick with whatever the pioneer had with him. He had to travel weeks on end without much help while taking cover from some native tribes at the same time. And this is just a small, tiny example. I don't want to see our forefathers' knowledge disappear into the darkness of time. And if you care about your family and what America stands for, then neither should you. This is the third and most important lesson of all. It's always up to you. Now, I believe in God and in the power of free will, and I believe that you are the only one in charge of your destiny, and that you're constantly making decisions that shape the rest of your life. Now, it's true we all had different starts, depending on our families and upbringing, but for most of us here in the United States, we at least had decent beginnings. We had water and food, we could go shopping from time to time, and we had a decent medical system compared to other countries. We should be more thankful for that. And we should ensure that we have something put aside for darker times. If anything goes wrong with this country, don't blame the government or the president. They don't truly care about you or your family. You'll be the only one in charge of your fate. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but nothing falls from the sky. God helps you, but He doesn't lay it on your table. You have to work hard and do things yourself. As long as you're aware of this, your destiny rests solely on you and your willpower. Now, you can truly change things, and you can do a lot more than you think you can. With this idea in mind, 5 years ago, I wanted to do something that hadn't been done before. Something that not only would help me survive a crisis without investing a fortune in stockpiles, but something that I could do around my house on a daily basis using only methods that were tested and proven by our forefathers for centuries. I wanted to unearth and learn the forgotten ways of our great-grandparents. I went to my grandfather to find out how he survived and to learn the little secrets that helped him stay alive in spite of almost everyone else dying. Now, he was almost 90 years old, but the old man was still in good shape. For 3 weeks on end, I absorbed his lessons like a dry sponge. And on top of that, we built a lot of things together, including a root cellar and a storm shelter, just like the folks did when he was young. We made lard and ham, and we smoked 4 turkeys and preserved them for winter in 4 different traditional ways, and a lot more. And when I was a child, I was raised by my grandparents, but I hadn't spent much quality time with them until then. In fact, there were months when we barely even spoke, not because we couldn't stand each other, but only because I was always too busy working or taking care of my kids. A lame excuse and a thing that I deeply regretted later on in life. Well, my grandfather passed on a couple of years ago, and with him, a magnificent amount of survival knowledge. I don't know if you're in a similar situation, but think about your grandfather and how many things he did or knew, things that will vanish forever into the dark abyss of ignorance. And because I deeply believed in lesson number 3, that I was the only one who could change something, my goal for the last couple of years changed from not just learning, but saving our forefathers' ways. This is one of the most important things I've done in my life, and I'm proud of it, but it took me 5 difficult years. Now, first, there's no person that knows all our forefathers' forgotten secrets. Let's just say there are still a handful of people that still practice a lost skill transmitted from generation to generation, even today. But not all the skills, of course. I had to get in touch with a lot of people. Second, where do you find these guys? They are no mainstream survival experts, they don't have a website or a TV show, and some of them even live in remote areas with no internet or TV cable, earning a living like the pioneers did. Third, I wanted to do something unprecedented. You know, articles like 11 skills your great-grandparents had that you didn't, and they started listing the skills: hunting, fishing, foraging, butchering, and so on. Well, this kind of information will never help anyone. I needed something solid, exact, and to the point. Not just skills, I wanted to know things that they actually built, ate, and stored, and exactly how they did it. And fourth, I'm not sitting on a gold mine. As much as I enjoyed traveling and learning these skills, I still needed to go to work. But what I didn't realize when I started my quest is that you can't save these skills only by writing them down. If all these writings will be forgotten in a dusty drawer right next to my bed, it won't help anyone. This knowledge will die together with me, and all my efforts to save our forefathers' ways would have been in vain. So this is because all my life I blindly believed in Lesson 3, that it's always up to me. But I was wrong. In this case, it's only halfway there. It's also up to you. Today is your chance to be a part of saving our ancestors' lost ways. I wanted to make this information available to every family out there without having to spend years of their lives or thousands of dollars. So I came up with this great idea to edit all my manuscripts and turn all this lost knowledge into one of the greatest books of this century. The Lost Ways, Saving Our Forefathers' Skills. Now, as you can see, I designed and edited the book in an old-fashioned way, but most of it is not written by me personally, because I didn't want people to read a second account. I'm sure a lot of information would have been lost in this process. Those little secrets that make a thing really work, those little things that make a big difference. So I paid these experts for their time, and I got what I wanted. These people are not professional writers, but instead are uniquely special. They're neither the strong, badass type that you see in Rambo movies, nor the ultra-rich preppers from reality shows. They're simple people who know a lost skill very, very well. They're smart, shrewd, and wise enough to survive for months or even years in the world's most remote places. Now, here's a glimpse of what you'll find in The Lost Ways. You'll discover the lost remedies used by our ancestors for centuries. And I'm not talking about rare and complicated insights that only a botanist knows. I'm talking about plants that grow in your backyard or around your house. Very common weeds. For example, this common driveway weed is one of nature's most powerful survival plants. It's not only edible, but it's super nutritious, easy to identify, has no poisonous lookalikes, and is used as medicine. Following the instructions from The Lost Ways, go ahead and use this underestimated or discredited plant and make yourself a powerful antimicrobial and cell regrowth bandage. Or simply make a tea with it that can be used for a wide range of digestive problems and toothaches. Native American Eric Bainbridge, who is on the board of directors of a Native American Educational and took part in the reconstruction of the native village of Kualoklo in California, will show you how Native Americans build the subterranean roundhouse, an underground house that today will serve you as a storm shelter, a perfectly camouflaged hideout, or a bunker. It can easily shelter 3 to 4 families. So how will you feel if, when all hell breaks loose, you'll be able to call all your loved ones and offer them guidance and shelter? And besides that, the subterranean roundhouse makes an awesome root cellar where you can keep all your food and water reserves year-round. From Ruff Simmons, an Old West history expert and former deputy, you'll learn the techniques and methods used by the wise sheriffs from the frontiers to defend an entire village despite being outnumbered and outgunned by gangs of robbers and bandits, and how you can use their wisdom to defend your home against looters when you'll be surrounded. Patrick Shelley, who earned a living in the woods for years on end, will show you how to make foolproof traps. He wrote an awesome chapter about how to trap different animals in winter just like our forefathers. When 100 hungry mouths will shoot each other over the last deer to feed their children, your family can eat the favorite food of trappers and mountain men from the 1800s. From Shannon Azares, you'll learn how sailors from the 18th century preserved water in their ships for months on end, even years, and how you can use this method to preserve water for your family cost-free. Mike Searson, who is a firearm and Old West history expert, will show you what to do when there's no more ammo to be had, how people who wandered the West managed to hunt 8 deer with 6 bullets, and why their supply of ammo never ran out. Remember the panic buying in the first half of 2013? Well, that was nothing compared to what's going to precede the collapse. From Susan Morrow, an ex-science teacher and chemist, you'll master the art of poultice. She says, if you really explore the ingredients from which our forefathers made poultices, you'll be totally surprised by the similarities with modern medicine. Well, how would you feel in a crisis to be the only one from the group knowledgeable about this lost skill? When there are no more antibiotics, people will turn to you to save their children's lives. If you liked our video tutorial on how to make pemmican, then you'll love this. I'll show you how to make another superfood that our troops were using in the Revolutionary War, which even George Washington ate on several occasions. This food never goes bad, and I'm not talking about honey or vinegar. I'm talking about real food. And the awesome part is that you can make this food in just 10 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that you already have the ingredients in your house right now. Now, really, this is all just a peek. The Lost Ways is a far-reaching book with chapters ranging from simple things like making tasty bark bread, like people did when there was no food, to building a traditional backyard smokehouse, and many, many, many more. And believe it or not, this isn't all. If you get The Lost Ways right now, you'll also receive 3 exclusive reports that will be off the table soon. There's an old saying that our great-grandparents used to know. Once in life, you need a doctor, a lawyer, a policeman, and a preacher. But every day, 3 times a day, you need a farmer. So the first report you'll get is what every survivalist should grow in his backyard. This special report contains the most nutritious and toughest plants that you should start growing so you'll never run out of food. These plants are reliable in the worst possible conditions, including drought, flooding, or light deprivation. And you'll also find instructions on how to plant, grow, harvest, and store them. I'm also pretty sure that you're familiar with this 150-year-old saying that it's not the strongest species that survived, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. So the second bonus you'll get is how to outlive an EMP, the early pioneer way, which is a day-by-day guide that shows you what to do after an EMP every day for 30 days using the Lost Ways. Think about it this way. If an EMP had struck in the late 1800s, nobody would have noticed it. Our great-grandparents didn't even know what an EMP was, nor did they know what modern technology was. But they surely lived, survived, and prospered without it. Now things are a little bit different, and because this event can happen all of a sudden with no warning whatsoever, it might be difficult for even the smartest minds to know what to do from the moment the running water stops and your food spoils to the moment when looters come knocking at your door. So in this report, you'll learn the 10 things that you should do on day 1, what you should make on day 2, what you definitely need to turn to on day 3, and so on until day 30, when you'll be absolutely 100% self-sufficient, protected, and able to help others if you want to. Unless you're living in a bunker full of stockpiles, doing these things in the wrong order may literally mean death. Now, I'll show you what to do every day so you'll never run out of water, food, or heat, and then what to do or build to improve things day by day. Another old saying people used to say is, for every minute you spend organizing, an hour is earned. So the third report you'll get is a step-by-step guide to building your own can rotation system that can hold at least 700 cans of different sizes. You'll never have to look at 50 cans for expiration dates, and you'll never need to throw away cans again because they've spoiled. A can rotator is not only a time saver but also a money saver. As you can see in this video, the mechanism is very simple. Whenever you buy new cans, you insert them in the upper shelf. The cans will automatically roll down, and they'll be the last in the row. When you pick them up, you do so from the shelf below. So you'll always pick the can that you bought first and therefore with the closest expiration date. Cool and efficient. The one you've just seen in the video, I built with only $95, Pretty cheap if you think that a similar rotator costs $420 on Amazon and holds only 450 cans, and theirs aren't even that cool. Now, once you have the plans and the step-by-step guide with pictures, all it takes is just 1 day of work, even less. So, if you choose to save the lost ways now, you'll also get these 3 exclusive bonuses that are worth $29 each for free, and unlimited access to the members area, where you can ask me anything at any time. I'll be there to answer your questions and to help you if you need any clarification on anything. By knowing the ways of our forefathers, believe it or not, you're covered for anything. You'll never have to spend money on any prepping material again. And forget about unreliable and expensive modern survival equipment. Why even bother with reinventing the wheel when these things have been working right for centuries? The Lost Ways prepares you to deal with worst-case scenarios with the minimum amount of resources, just like our forefathers lived their lives, totally independent from electricity, cars, or modern technology whatsoever, which means you'll also be bulletproof against the ever-increasing threat of an electromagnetic pulse, a powerful economic breakdown, famines, and natural disasters. You'll have the power to protect and save your family, even to rebuild your community during the worst of times. And besides that, The Lost Ways is not merely a survival book, because most of the knowledge you'll find in it will begin improving things in your life starting today. And what I'm talking about is the type of self-sufficiency that our great-grandfathers used to have. I'm talking about things that they did around their homes and the healthy lives that they lived. And at the same time, you get to take part in doing something great, saving our forefathers' lost skills. Now, I consider that I've done my part, the hardest and costliest part, if I may say so. All you need to do is to make sure that you hand this knowledge over when it's time to, and take full advantage of it until then. Now, I've shown it to some expert preppers and readers of mine, and some of them said that they would easily pay $1,000 just to learn these skills. I even thought of creating a weekend workshop and charging at least $500 for a seat. There are a lot of people that do that. But I realized that this would be wrong because only a handful of people will actually learn the lost ways. And while my main focus is not to get rich, but to save these skills by spreading this knowledge to other people just like me. Now, remember when a man's word was his bond? When you made an agreement and you just shook on it? Well, frankly, I'd like to do things the old-fashioned way here, on a handshake. So today, you can just shake my hand and seal the deal for a price that anyone can afford. While this video is still up, you can get The Lost Ways plus the 3 bonuses for a one-time special offer of just $37. But the only way to get it is to click the Add to Cart button below now. The way I see it, you have 3 options here. You can hope that things will get better and that a crisis will never strike America. And I'm hoping the same thing, by the way. But my grandfather taught me better. He taught me, as I've told you, to never take anything for granted.